Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of House Calls. And I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Cole for joining us this morning, taking time out of his schedule as a fellow activist and also a podcast personality. So, Chris, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm so glad you reached out. I was very excited to talk to you.
Likewise. You know, I want to say thanks for coming out. I know that you've been very active on social media, and I like following you. So I thought it was a good. I was very, very pleased when you gave me the opportunity to have you come on the show.
I appreciate it, man. And we're both from Long Island, as we were just sort of mentioning. I'm originally from East Northport, so.
Oh, okay. So basically a little south and east of where you were from.
Yeah. I live in North Carolina now. I moved back in '96.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
How's North Carolina treating you?
North Carolina is okay. It's not as crowded. It's the inflation hasn't hit us yet, so we'll see. The whole world's kind of crazy.
You know, I got to tell you, I love New York. It's been great being here my whole life, but I'm actually heading your way. I think in a couple of years.
Come on down, man. We can chat more in person.
Sounds good. Definitely sounds good. So listen, I want to talk a little bit because a lot of times I find it interesting how people became, active and what made them speak out. And, you kind of gave me a little heads up that you don't really talk much about yourself and, how you ended up becoming, coming on the broadcast and becoming active. So I don't know if maybe you'd be willing to share a little bit of that this morning.
Yeah. Like I had said, I got active, and of course I talk about my story a lot personally with people that I know and here at home. But I've sort of stayed away as it's suggested for all of us to do, and my belief on why we're not supposed to talk about our stories and the shame game that goes behind it. Is because a lot of times you'll see that you'll get cracked down by these judges and these courts if you talk about this abuse and this misbehaving judiciary system that we have going on. Basically a lot of unlawful things done by legal professionals. So just because you're a legal professional, you get to be legally abusive.
Yes.
And getting threatened. So I'm not big on bullies. I grew up about 5 foot tall my whole life.
All right.
And I'm not a big, and I'm from New York, so I'm not really a big fan of bullies. And I have a big mouth. I guess that comes with the short man's complex.
Okay.
However, I got involved when I experienced it for myself. Really back in 2015 when I had my firstborn son and was put on child support. My ex had left me. I didn't leave the relationship or abandon my children or anything like that, my child at the time. But we had moved to Nashville. I was pursuing music, and she was having trouble being there for whatever her issues are. And she left. And immediately she ran to the child support agency to apply for, well, not child support necessarily, but to apply for state benefits. So things like Medicaid and all those things that you can collect as a single parent, single mother. And obviously they put you on child support. They put the father on child support, or whoever that they name as the father in this case. So immediately I experienced something that was very odd to me at 35 years old. I thought child support was designed for parents who were unwilling to financially support their children. And instead, it turned out to be an option for a parent who's unwilling to financially support their child, but wants the custody of their child.
Mm-hmm.
And it baffled me. So going through that experience, that didn't last very long, as I was ignoring the red flags and decided to reconcile, or we decided to reconcile things. Sort of fast forwarding a little bit, when I had moved back from Nashville to North Carolina, because I felt like I needed to repair this. I wanted to fix the relationship. Maybe I pushed the move to Nashville too soon. We had just had a child, and maybe I needed to back it up a little bit. So we reconciled here in North Carolina, and we had broken up. This was pretty typical of our relationship. Breaking up, getting back together, reconciling, breaking up, and I guess I wasn't ready to leave the cycle yet. So what had happened was we had broken up, and I guess she was particularly upset. She can give you her uh, factors and why she broke up with me or whatever. But I had just said to
You know,
her,
I just want to
"Oh,
ask you a question there, Chris. It's
yeah,
interesting because I've had my own, my own journey, and my ex has had the opportunity to speak on several different podcasts, CNN, all kinds of different media outlets. I wonder, is your ex willing to tell her story? Because my ex is well aware of what she's doing, so she avoids
sure."
all types of invitations to tell her side.
We did have, um, let's just say I'm a little bit more brutally honest and open to have discussion, and even more willing today than I used to be to admit my own faults. Um, but she's welcome to come on any broadcast. In fact, if that would help things and air out laundry, unfortunately, as you know, a lot of these folks who take basically a relationship that wasn't working, and they, whether it be mental health, emotional trauma, whatever it is, I'm not a we all have learned from different professionals in our activism about trauma and aces and childhood traumas and growing up, and how the cycle continues. If your ex was in an abusive family, then they can wind up recreating all that, or if they were abused. So we're not professionals, but we do regurgitate a lot of the things that we learn. You know, the stories that they make up, the realities that they misconstrue and change facts around, instead of just saying, "Hey, look, I screwed up, you screwed up, we're no longer compatible or never were, and we have
Mhm.
two children." It's almost like they're stuck in a childhood trauma where they can't accept the fact, not that it's easy. It doesn't matter if you're an adult when a relationship ends, especially with the other parent of your children. It's hard. But to cope with that reality, they literally, and to stay in control, and to not have accountability, they'll recreate scenarios,
Yeah.
and we go down to into false allegations, we go into gatekeeping, alienating, and even in my experience, and you may relate, as I've gotten further into this activism, I'm very public. Even my personal profile is public. um, I'm getting these terminologies that I share: gatekeeping, narcissism, all this behavior, thrown at me from
Right.
her. And
Mhm.
it's like, you're just deflecting, or you're just like,
It's classic because whenever you read textbooks, obviously when this happens to you, you try to find resources and to learn about it, and it's almost like you're reading a playbook.
right,
That's what I get from everybody who's going through this. Is like when they read about it, it's like that happened to me, this happened to me. It's almost like a recipe happens
exactly.
to take place. So I always find that interesting. How they switch the terminology, how they program the kids, and next thing you know, the kids start to resemble them, sound like them, dress like them, and
And
it's
the
very
and
obvious.
and the new spouses, a lot of times you'll find that these types of parents, many times, especially they've accused, and we're speaking from a man's perspective. So, um, ladies, we do know, we always like to preface anytime we have these conversations, that we know women go through these things too.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're speaking from our perspective. Please don't be offended. And so what it is I found very much that I was always being accused of things I wasn't doing, but that I don't even know if she really even thought I was doing it. But then I found out later that that was behavior that she was pursuing. And there was always someone waiting in the wing. This has been going on a little over 2 years now. And I've gone on a few dates, but I've relatively stayed single this entire time because my focus is getting back on my financial feet, as well as getting a regular life with my children. And until then, my focus is not to bring anybody into this.
Yeah.
Again, within weeks, there was somebody else. And then that person didn't even last very long. Now there's someone else.
All
And
right.
that person has moved into the house almost within a few months. And they had dated previously, and that didn't work out very much because apparently he was a alcoholic and he was always speaking of doing violent things. And they had broken up. We had gotten back together, and since then, our last breakup, when I sort of had the courage to walk away, she found that I guess that person's okay now, and moved them in with my children, our children. Sorry, I try not to get into that trap of saying my children.
Yeah.
It's rubbing off on me.
Yep.
So, knowing all these things, having to go through these things, and having a system that basically makes you circumvent all your abilities as a parent to protect your own children, outside of violence or anything like that, but being able to not assert your parental rights and going, whoa, 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 whoa. If you have any disputes, you need to be filtered like a
Yeah.
flock through our system.
That's a big one that I don't talk about much, but it's all, when you find yourself as an alienated parent or in these high conflict situations, I found in my personal experience and from the people in my circles that you don't even have an opportunity to be a parent because
Right.
you're so removed from everything. There's always these chances of accusations. If you parent your child and you just in a way, like let's say that you punish them, they do something with their cell phone and they're on inappropriate social media. So you take the phone away for a couple of days. Next thing you know, you're a bad guy.
Right.
And in my case, same thing. I feared so much. I'm lucky that my kids, really, really, I'm lucky. They just don't get into trouble and they're good kids. But I'm almost afraid. And the other thing too is I'm always afraid that they don't want to come around. So don't give them a reason to come around. So it's almost like I want them to like me more than
Right.
I'm able to be a parent. And it becomes,
Right.
and I, as a pediatrician, I should know better. But I think
Right.
as a victim, very, very different. It's one thing to give the advice, another thing to need it. So
Sure. And so you wrestle with it in your head. I mean, I've questioned myself when I've maybe done the right thing, but it upset my children. And I'm like, oh, is this pushing them away? I
yeah,
mean, I'm already limited with my access to them. Is this hurting their desire to be with me? Because on the 4 days a month that I currently have them, for no reason, by the way, I just have to fight for 2 years just to have them every other weekend.
yeah,
For those 4 nights a month that I get them, part of you wants to encourage and be their friend, and the other part knows that you need to. This is your only opportunity to sort of ingrain in them and parent them in any way, even knowing that maybe you're not too happy about the parenting that's going on 85%, 90% of the time with the other parent.
yeah,
And that's where a lot of this comes from. A lot of these alienating parents who gatekeep and stuff like that, they once the relationship is over, they really think of you only at best as a financial tool, and that they don't want your parenting style because maybe you grew up in a different home. Not that it's dangerous or wrong, it's different.
yeah,
They don't want your parenting style anymore involved with their children, because they don't want to co-parent anymore. They wanted to move on with their new relationship, someone that fits in their box, and they're gonna, and 9 times out of 10, that new person is just there for that emotional support of some kind, or physical support. But they're real that other parent's not always the best step parent. They're just there. And in my case, that is the case. He's a very abusive person. Um, you know, uh, I've had some run-ins with him. I had a run-in with him this weekend where the police were called in front of my kids. I
yeah,
have that on video. So these are all things that I'm documenting, as well as these podcasts. Carlos, we are literally leaving footprints for our children and our children's children as we do these
yeah,
podcasts, and we share these posts, and all these things that we do that we weren't able to document, let's say 30 years ago.
yeah,
I have this interview with you. I have countless interviews. I have one with Dr. Warren Farrell. I have one with libertarian presidential candidates.
Nice.
This is going to show, without a shadow of a doubt, that we're fighting, and that we're not going anywhere, that we didn't go anywhere, that the stories aren't true, and unfortunately, that can also be very dangerous, because these parents that are maybe have personality disorders or emotionally unhealthy, you don't know what the repercussions are when you finally stand up to their
Yeah.
abuse, what they're going to do. Are they going to hurt the kids? Are they going to hurt themselves? Are they going to hurt you? I spoke with Dean Tong, and his client, John Mast, who was tragically murdered, just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that was after a 3-year custody battle with false allegations, sexual allegations that were disproven. And he was finally, set free from those allegations, and the court awarded him time with his kids, unsupervised. And he was met with his ex-father-in-law, and a gun, and he was murdered. And we don't know the extent of mental instability. We know that it's teetering on dangerous, because they're willing to.
I got to ask you a question, because I'm aware of the story, and I'm not
Yeah.
too familiar with the particulars. Were his children at this exchange when?
So I have not heard any of that information released by anybody, who either Dean or anyone. I don't know if they've released that information yet. I can find out from Dean Tong, and a few others. I don't believe that the kids were there at the exchange. I really hope not,
Yeah.
because this sounds like premeditated. And I believe that the father-in-law showed up, and this was completely planned, and the kids were probably kept away from what was about to happen. That's my guess.
That's my hope. The trauma. I mean, it's the trauma enough of going through a divorce and losing their dad. If it happened in their, if they witnessed it, it would have been
Well, and
imaginable.
if you think about it too, typically people who behave in this way want to twist the narrative. So they wouldn't want their children to actually witness what happened, the truth. They are probably going to, which probably won't work, because she'll probably see prison herself once they connect her involvement. 'Cause I doubt that this father-in-law acted alone, especially when the kids weren't present and this woman had no idea, especially if she's the one making false allegations of sexual assault on her own children by this man. So, we're going to learn more about that. But like I said, I would guess that the kids didn't witness it, because it's easier to tell a lie about what happened with their father. They could say that there was an altercation, or the father threatened her father, and so he was protecting himself. When the reality is he was murdered.
It's when you go back and you tell these things. I wanted to go back even when you're saying that leaving footprints for your children. One of the things that I want to do is two of my children are very, very socially active and
Right.
aware, and I want to let them know that despite what you've been told, and if I hope and pray, you always hold out that hope that I'm going to be reunited with them. But I was at a minimum they can know that I fought, and there's another side of this story, and I never gave up on them. I always loved them, and I was good. So, that to me is undeniable, and they'll always know that I fought.
Absolutely.
I'm just not sure how deep the programming is, that if I'll ever come around.
Well, I mean, like I said, with the technology and the documenting capability that we have, like literally, we're our own. You're a news broadcast in a way,
Yeah.
small as we are. These videos, unless the government decides to wipe the internet, which is not would not surprise me. Of all evidence,
Yep.
yeah. So, you know, we are doing the right thing. We're doing the best thing that we can do with the tools that we have. You and me are just dads. You're a pediatrician. I'm a musician. I'm a restaurant manager. We speak well. We're educated, and we decided, hey, what can I do besides fight back and get arrested? And we're doing the best we can, Carlos, and hopefully it creates change. That's throughout history. I think this is what it takes. We all know the pain that people are going through. Most people are pretty quiet. Most people are seeking help. And there are a few of us that I guess are outraged enough and have this inherent duty to speak. And it's prevalent throughout history that there are leaders. I consider you a leader. I consider myself a leader. Without boosting our egos, we will bring people along. We will inspire people, and we'll do it the best we can, because I don't want to sit 10, 15, 20 years from now. I have two sons, and they're at very high risk of meeting the wrong woman, especially being raised by the wrong woman, to find a woman like their mother who's willing to behave that way, and then have their kids taken from them. So I may miss out on a lot as a parent, and that's made me very sad at times when I reflect on that. But right now they're still very young. They're only my oldest will be 8 in a few weeks, and my youngest just turned 4. I hope this is over soon for me. My kids love me very much. We have a good time when they're here. I miss them when they're gone. And, when it's time for them to have their own children, I hope we've put in the fight and put in the work that laws will be changed. And I believe they will. I spoke with Mark Ludwig back when I first started doing this, and he sort of talked to me in a very realistic way. Mark's been doing this a while, and he's in the political realm. And he said that, something like this that's taken 50, 60 years to enmesh is going to take as much, if not close to as much time to unravel, because it's very interwoven with federal funding and all these things. And I said, Mark, I don't believe that. I think with the things that we have, like I said, the technologies that we have, the voices that we're able to spread, that we can nix this in the next few years, 3 to 5 years. And it's going to take people like you and me and Mark pushing, broadcasting, speaking out, organizing, and push it harder than it's ever seen. So there's already been massive change in the last 2 years, more than we thought. So, I'm pushing a shared parenting bill here in North Carolina. I'm speaking directly with my representative, who's also going to be on my podcast tonight.
Nice.
At 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm speaking with my district representative, Dennis Rydell, and he's very much in favor. He actually showed me a shared parenting bill that was introduced in 2015 and 2016 session. And it very much states, and I wish I had it in front of me, that shared parenting should be the primary focus, that it should be encouraged to the max. And I can tell you that after 2 years of being in those courtrooms, between the judges, between the attorneys, including my own, Dr. Carlos,
Okay.
nobody is encouraging shared parenting. But I can tell you I'm $30,000 in debt and $20,000 in arrears. And nobody, including the police, serve and protect, none of that's happening. Yeah. So we have the shared parenting bill, and it's very there's a lot of terminology that's vague that I'm going to help him sort of condense and sort of make a little bit more precise and detailed. But a lot of it's very, very, it's a broad stroke enough to say the state of North Carolina wants to maximize and encourage a parent's right and a child's right to a maximized relationship. And that has not taken place. So when I bring that piece of legislation into the court here in Alamance County, North Carolina, I don't even think they even know that this bill was passed, or they're just going about business as usual. As far as they go to work, to them, it's their job, it's their kingdom, it's their little neck of the woods. They've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. And they literally have relationships with these attorneys and all these folks involved. They have coffee in the morning and they go business as usual, and they maximize profits.
You know what, Chris, I want to say, when you mentioned they might not even be aware of it and going, day-to-day business as usual. I was actually interviewed on on another podcast by a family law attorney. This man, is well-versed. and he
Yeah.
was unaware of Title IV defunding, and I was just like, how is that?
How is
How is
that
it policy?
possible?
And I could see not being like, having complete expertise in it, but to not be aware, I was really dumbfounded. I
Yeah, I
really,
mean, I'm in the restaurant business. That's like me being unaware of the new health codes,
yeah,
or not knowing how to play a G chord on my guitar. It's like
yeah,
you can only play dumb so long, and if you are unaware, you're not getting the proper re-education that I'm pretty sure attorneys and judges are required to get.
yeah.
Which my legislator told me, these judges and these attorneys are required to re-up their education whenever there's new laws or new mandates or anything passed. And I'm not a legal professional by any means, but I consider myself intelligent and I ask
Yeah.
questions. And there's a lot of dots not connecting. And Carlos, I think the biggest issue is there are so many parents who are afraid to assert their rights and assert themselves
Well,
because
especially
they're
when you're in the middle of the case because you're just so afraid of the backlash. And I always feel guilty about that because I always tell people, we need you to come out in numbers. We need you to show yourselves. We need to show that we're a lobbying force. And a lot of people are scared. And I have to admit, when I was in my own case, I'm constantly in and out. This is never going to end for me. But
sure.
I was the judge guns for me because he knows I speak out, on social media, and I'm very critical of the flaws in the system and the corruption.
Absolutely. And keep doing that because I think what they're trying to do is wear us out.
Yeah.
And that's what's been happening. So if we keep punishing them, they'll eventually stop. I know that that's the opposite of what you should do. I I don't I don't invite being punished, but it's all part of the evidence.
You're
It's
aware it's
all
going to happen.
it's all part of the
Yeah.
story. If I speak out and you slap me, my kids are going to know. The
Yeah.
public's the public's going to know. If you keep me away from my kids because I'm willing to say that what you're doing is wrong, the world's going to know.
Yeah. And I think, more and more of them are going to start to, I could kind of see, the one thing I'm happy about because the process for me is so slow and is, obviously you want to see the reward of our hopes and activities. But I do see here, like, I'm actually good friends with another advocate. That's actually been, a mentor for me, Gary Jacobs, a Long Island backstory. The courts know when he's there. The
Right.
courts, they ask him first if he's going to be broadcasting.
Sure.
He's gotten a lot of exposure. So it's like, you know what, good. I'm glad that he's getting exposure. And we'll see, like on his feed, a judge will come up or some attorneys come up, and they want to know what's going on. So we're definitely getting their attention.
Well, I mean, that's the same thing, Cash Jackson. They
Sure.
know when Cash is, and you know what? I wish for that. Like I want them to know what I do for my children, that I'm not a deadbeat. I don't deserve what you're doing to me. And there are tons of other fathers, thousands, millions, and
Yeah.
mothers that don't
Mm.
deserve what you're doing. You're not going to scare us. You're not going to intimidate us. Like I said, I don't like bullies, and typically I become a bully to a bully. And I'm gonna speak out for my children. My children are gonna see all of this, Carlos, including this interview that you and I are having right now.
Yeah. And they do look, like again, my friend Gary Jacobs, I did a kind of a small, a 1 hour, interview with him, and we posted it on YouTube. And his son, who hasn't spoken to him in years, made a negative comment, but a comment. So you know that we were very, very, it was a mixed thing for us in that he is aware and Gary wants to have, a positive relationship with him again, but his son's
Right,
so programmed against him. But they do look.
right,
So I think it's important that we tell the truth, and some of it they're gonna, there are things that my kids have, asked me. He's like, listen, I'm not happy about that. I wasn't the right decision, but
right,
that is true. I'll
right.
tell, on questions, like, I'll tell you the truth. I may not want to talk about it. We may disagree on certain things, but we'll always have a conversation that I want you to be open and honest with me, and we can discuss things. And I think that as a parent in our position, that's a very important thing, a very important message to convey.
There are things that I did in during the relationship and even in my behavior as a growing human being that
Hmm.
I what I remember growing up is that we're taught that cops are good, judges are good, all this adults, listen to adults, trust this and that. And it's a very different world than that. You know, I think that we've hidden too much of our humanity from our children, and we've made ourselves look infallible as grown-ups. And I think that being transparent, especially, I mean, at an appropriate time with our children, to show them that we make mistakes and that we grew from them and learn from them, instead of them thinking that mommy and daddy never fight, or daddy never yelled at mommy or called her a bad name, or mommy never did this. No, we did do these things, and we learned that they were wrong. At a younger age, they'll go, maybe I can, you know, mommy and daddy have those problems too. They have those feelings too, and they don't do it anymore. I think that's more impressionable on our children than pretending like we're perfect and that we've never done anything wrong. And that doesn't mean be friends with your kids and tell them all your dirty secrets. It means treat them like the human beings that you want them to become, and let them know that that you made mistakes, and that you were a child once, and you you know we're
A good point that you brought up was that, age appropriate to discuss certain details. And I find that to be very, very important because obviously, we've all been told the same thing. Don't discuss
sure.
court in front of the kids. And my daughter, as early as 12, was asking me, questions that she had, her mother had raised some issues that I disagree with, or
Sure.
outright misrepresentation of the facts. And I said, no, look, that's not the case. Here's what it is. Here's the document that was submitted, and you could see here, this is what took place in court, not what you were told. I don't know. I wasn't there. Maybe there was a misunderstanding, but here, this is it. This is what happened. And
Right.
I was criticized harshly for that in court. It's like, you can't treat kids like, try to keep them in the dark about everything. This is affecting their life forever, and they're going to have intelligent questions as they get older.
Sure.
And I think we have to be honest and let them know. Now, the particulars in the battle and trying to have them choose a side, obviously I'm against. But to tell them the honest truth when they have a question about, the divorce or the constant legal battles or what's going on, I think they need to know. Because the other thing too is sometimes if you know what it's like, if you don't have all the details, you try to think of the scenarios in your head. You may be accurate on some points, you may be inaccurate. And you got to run with that. And sometimes you need to have the current. Actually, you just do need the current information to properly process everything.
And you mentioned something, that I've gone through, and I'm sure we're not the only ones. So the biggest reason I like to talk about what we go through is to let parents know, and moms and dads know that, hey guys, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
You feel alone on an island when it comes to this, and you isolate, and you're shameful, and you're scared. And I felt all those things, and I can tell you that I'm alive today because I let it out.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because I speak. I tell people how I feel. I don't bury it in a bottle. I don't bury it in a pill. Sometimes I try to bury it at the gym, and I wind up hurting myself. So I try,
What happens when you get older? You're like, oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah. I'm like, oh, my sciatica.
Yeah.
There's definitely there's been a lot of growth for me as a individual and as a father. After the relationship. So there wasn't all bad. There was a lot of good that came out of, I've gotten to raise my children, Carlos, and you might be able to relate to this, more having them every other weekend by myself than I did when I was in my relationship,
Yeah.
living in the house, because I was working all the time or fighting with their mother all the time, and would run away all the time, whether it be to a friend's, whether it be to a bar, whether it be to the gym. And I was not engaged with my children. I was paying for them. And I'm doing that now. However, when I get my, 48 hours or my 56 hours every other weekend with my kids, they're with me. And I get to raise them and talk to them and parent them and direct them. And I never got to do that. I was alienated and shut down as a parent in that relationship. And I didn't recognize that.
Hmm.
But what I did recognize was I was angry and upset. and resentful, because I was at work 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And when I came home, home life sucked and I was miserable.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that because we have so much in common, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, when I was still together in my marriage, you know, I was always so focused on, you know, it was a one income home, so
Right.
so preoccupied with being a provider and giving a lifestyle. You want your kids to have, you know, the things that you didn't have as a kid. You try to provide and to, you know, to improve life for them.
Hmm.
And I actually feel that I became a better father after the separation and divorce, and that you realize how precious the time is and how much time I had spent working and missing out on them.
Sure. And what you're also not engaged in that volatile, toxic relationship anymore. No one talks about men's mental health. We're doing it a little bit more now.
Mhm.
But the I think toxic masculinity is actually men withholding their masculinity, and masculinity includes feelings. Um, that's when men become dangerous, is when we don't have permission to feel or to express.
Yeah.
Anytime you see men who are violent or who do bad things, I can guarantee you that it was an environmental issue that they saw, or it's pent up feelings and frustrations that they had. And I have never hit a woman. Um, and but I was coping with my frustration in unhealthy ways, whether it be drinking too much, binge drinking, um, being verbally, you know, a lot of times people think, oh, he's verbally abusive, but we never talk about uh, responsive abuse. And I had to recognize that a lot of my abuse verbally was responsive. I was dealing with someone who was very irrational, very emotional, and I couldn't fix them, but I wanted to fix the relationship because I had kids with this person.
Mhm.
Part of me cared about this person. A lot of times you wouldn't have thought I did because my reactive behavior. Well, then when abuse goes on long enough, it starts to change you. Like, we don't want to be angry, resentful people. But what happens is when you're in a toxic relationship, you respond abusively. That starts to become your nature for survival.
You know,
And
the hard part, like you said, the environment, because I think I have changed so much in the past,
right,
you know, since geez, this all started for me in 2008, and
yeah,
so much different. And I think that, you know, when you put somebody under unrelenting pressure, you change them, you know, and
right,
there's been things that, you know, I've been driven to depression that I've never would have imagined possible. I've been, you know, a period of time where I was just angry. And
hmm,
you know, your current relationship has to survive these challenges, because it becomes, it all along, well, not all along, the past couple of years, I've started to get a better insight into how difficult it is. You know, for I've been with the same person, you know, since the separation,
right,
and very, very difficult because I've been through so much grief and so much unrelenting pressure that it
right.
changes you, and it makes it difficult for this, you know, your subsequent relationship to survive it.
Yeah, I mean, so like you said, you got healthier. We have to recognize we ignored I ignored red flags. And the reason I did that was because I needed help too. I wasn't healthy. And the reason I know I wasn't healthy is because I was compromising things that I know that I shouldn't have, and justifying the fact that, you know, if she'd misbehaved towards me and I'd misbehave back, I then felt like, well, maybe if I didn't do that, maybe I'm not helping the situation.
Mhm.
And that was true. And what I found is when I was started becoming willing to look at myself, and the behavior towards me not only stayed the same but actually increased worse. The better I became, the less conflictual that I was, the worse she was, because I wasn't fueling her intent, which was high conflict, because most likely that was something that she grew up in and that was normal. And when I started speaking like I'm speaking to you and not getting upset, that upset the relationship more,
Yeah.
which I thought was profound. And finally, I said, I'm doing all I can do. I don't want this to end. And I know there's going to be a lot of hell coming because I know who I'm dealing with, but I cannot do this. The first step for me is to walk away from this and get healthy and get whole and get back on my feet to be able to fight the battle. Because otherwise, I was going to live in it and my kids were going to live in it. And I couldn't do that anymore.
It's hard to do though. When you said you missed some red flags, I think that sometimes you get so lost in the forest, that you don't see the trees kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look back, you're like, oh man, I really should have picked up on that or I had no idea at the time. And that's all part of the learning curve. And I think that's what
Right.
important what we do is like one of the big points I try to repeat to people who, share the mornings with me is that I want these stories to come out so you can avoid what we ran into. It was
Right.
very, very painful lessons. And I really wish that I had some kind of heads up. So, it's almost like we reach people when it's a little too late or they're so deep in it. But I'm hoping that as more people become aware of your show, they are interested in their friends, your guests that are their friends, or somehow they know that we can shed light on this and we could prevent other people from, finding these things out and then saying, "Oh, gee, I didn't pick up on that red flag."
We are doing no one a service by being silent.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
nobody. I can tell you, I thank God that my mouth has got me in trouble a lot, but it's all, but I figured out a way to use, I say my God given inheritance of, my character. This is how I am. I'm very, and instead of being that reactive, abusive person, was to get healthy, get educated, and speak.
Yeah.
And I have the fortitude and the desire to speak. I want my life better. I want your life better. I want my kids' lives, your kids' lives. I want better because I know what not better feels like because I
Mm-hmm.
was living in it. And I wanted my ex's life to be better. That's why I was attracted to her. It wasn't just physical. She had a need, and I wanted to fix it. Dr. Torrey told me that there are men who are fixers, and we're knight in shining armors. We look for attractive women, whatever our attraction is,
Yeah.
and we look for these women that have these attributes that we like, and women do it too. Women are fixers, and that's a flaw. It's not a good thing to be a fixer. It's good to help, but it's not good to intermingle yourself with someone uh, to try to change their life within a relationship.
I think it's important too that you have to, with time you mature and then you realize what part of that attraction was. And I
Right.
found that in some of my relationships in the past, and there weren't many, that didn't work out, was that I'm actually kind of attracted to people's pain. And I found that seems
Sure.
to be,
You
uh
identify with it.
exactly. And then next thing
Mm.
you know, so the relationship builds on that, what's the word you're looking for when you identify with somebody? But basically that commonality that you have,
Sure.
and then it builds from there. And I think it's important too, because when you later on you realize, well, what's healthy for me to avoid, and,
Right.
and maybe I should be aware this is going to be a challenge to me. I want to fix this, but at the same time, it's going to come at a cost. So you have to be
Sure.
careful about, what your attraction is.
Yeah. And again, not having jumped into a relationship right away because I wanted to be validated in my behavior and finding someone to replace her so I didn't feel what I needed to feel. It's hard. It was awful. It's lonely. You're still going through the battle not only with your ex and that relationship ending. I didn't just lose my kids. I lost my relationship.
Yeah.
Somebody that I spent, whether it be because there's bonding that goes good and bad, toxic,
Mhm.
you're still having to heal even from a negative relationship. The loss of anything that you're familiar with is difficult. there's a sense of relief, but there's also obviously repercussions when you're dealing with someone that's high conflict. And you know, I've been called, and I want to get back into the story a little bit after this, but
Yeah.
I've been called a narcissist. We go back to using the terminologies that they see us express in our advocacy.
The projection.
I've been called a narcissist because maybe I'm assertive or I get egotistical or sometimes I'm arrogant or and that's probably I have to work on my humility at times. But a narcissist is clinically not someone who's arrogant. Now, being arrogant is part of being a narcissist, but there's a lack of empathy that narcissists have that they take to another degree. And I said, the boyfriend's calling me a narcissist. The ex is calling me a narcissist. And I said, I'm asking for 50-50 custody and telling you to go be happy.
Yeah.
And you want to lie about me and keep sole custody. Narcissists don't play 50-50. They play in charge. So by that definition, I'm not a narcissist, because if I was, I would be lying about you to have complete control of our children, even though I believe that she's a very unhealthy person. I know that I don't have the right, unless they're in extreme danger, I don't have the right to take my kids from their mother. And just knowing that, like in my own psyche and my own thought process, I can go, okay, I'm not narcissistic. I might be a jerk sometimes, and so you evaluate yourself.
Yeah.
Narcissists don't self-reflect. I self-reflect constantly. So that's an awareness that I'm also aware of.
No, but you have to be, especially, when you don't see your children as much, it preoccupies you, every waking moment. And I think
Right.
that you have such limited time with your children. Of course, you're going to reflect on everything because you're trying to process it. You're trying to avoid pitfalls, and you're trying to be a parent that you had dreamed you were going to be.
Exactly. Everything matters a little bit more when your time is limited. So you try to do the right things. Like you said, you want your kids to enjoy you, but you also want to get in as much as that of that influence as a parent. And when you get every other weekend, you're not participating in school. You're not participating in their diet very much. You're not participating in much advice. And a lot of times you're just hoping for a sunny day to go ride a bike
Yeah.
or play some video games. And then it's back to mom's or
And
it's
then
back to dad's.
you get criticized for being the Disney dad. Like,
And
oh,
you
how
and
funny
you're
it
being
is with dad. Yep.
yeah, you're being herded, like in the court system, into this role and then being blamed for being in that role, especially if you're doing a very good job in those 2 days that you have them. They're happy, they're healthy, they're not bleeding. Then something is obviously, there's going to be a complaint.
Yeah.
I had the police, the sheriff at my house because I sent my kids home with a different set of clothing than they came with.
Yeah.
The sheriff came to my house.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Just this weekend, or this Friday, the police came to an exchange because the boyfriend is being a little more hostile than he used to be. And he was obviously under the influence and probably has been for, I don't know, most of his life. He was looking rough, and I was a little concerned about it. But the cops were already coming to my house. Dr. Carlos, this is someone who 3 weeks ago had a procedure and asked me if I would take the kids to help her out. I guess the boyfriend was at work or hungover or whatever his deal was, and her mom wasn't available. Her little pack wasn't available, the one that usually backs her up. So I was called to help. I didn't throw it in her face. I guess I'm doing a little bit now though. I didn't throw it in her face. I didn't say anything. I was like, "Sure, what do you need? I love to see my kids. Are you okay? Do you need anything from me?" Despite the daggers and swords that have been thrown at me and the lies and the allegations, I have always, and with help from, whether it's speaking to my dad or my mom, who kind of say, "Chris, just get your kids. Don't be mean. This is not a time to rub her nose in it or anything like that. Go pick up your kids. I went and picked up my kids from
Yeah.
her house, which I pretty much stay away from, and had the kids for a few days, took care of them. We had a good time. And as soon as I returned them, it went back to, you didn't do this right. You didn't do that right. Oh,
Oh
you
yeah.
didn't do this. I'm
Yeah.
like, I
Mhm.
said, are you only nice when you're not
You think-
feeling well and you need something?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then this weekend, when I took the kids for a little bit, I disobeyed her direct orders of taking them to daycare the following morning because they didn't have school Friday. It was a mandatory teacher work day. So I was off in the afternoon. So I decided to go against her orders. And I said, look, I'm off this afternoon. The kids, I'm not dropping them off at daycare. I'm going to spend a few hours with them.
Sure.
Well, that's why the police were called on me. I was being punished because this controlling, if I don't know if I don't know what her deal is. I don't know
I
what
I can guess what happened when the police were called, but what happened?
they were like. So the cops totally understood my position. They listened to her first because it was her phone call, and they spoke to us for a while and said, yeah, we see what's going on here. The boyfriend looks rough. He looks like he's been on a bender for a while, like he hadn't slept in a while either. That it was a false call. That there was an intimidation factor going on for me. They see it all the time. And they said, as you know, there's nothing we can do, that you guys would have to take this to court. So what she's done twice now with law enforcement is use them as a tool, just like the courts or the child support agency, to abuse, to assert control that she doesn't possess. And it's all to punish. And what it does is it's exposing my children.
Punishes
My
the
my,
children too, because they could have had a nice day, and
my
now
8 year old,
police.
my 8 and 4 year old were in the back seat, like, what
Yeah.
is going on? And I felt terrible. And then I reflected, and I'm like, should I have done this? Should I have done that? Should I have just listened to what she told me to do to avoid this exposure? And like I said to my dad, I said, I think the lights just went out. Oh, we're losing power.
Uh-oh.
I think it's a
It
light
looks like
thing.
it looks like mood lighting. How there you go. It's
Yeah,
back.
I still have power. I don't know. We'll just go with it.
All
So
right.
if there's a light show behind you, don't worry about it.
Nice.
My dad said to me, Chris, maybe you should have just allowed, just done what she said and avoided that for your kids, because she threatened to call the police. And I was like, Dad, this is a tactic. This is abuse. You have to set boundaries, because yes, it was a bad moment. But my kids did see it. I'm sure they're scared and confused. I'm sure they got a mouthful of why. Um, but it's the truth. Like, the truth has got to come out. And I think when we hide from punishment, or we hide from being reprimanded for doing, I didn't do anything wrong by
The
keeping
big
my kids.
the big thing is to set boundaries, because what I found in my own life, I just wanted to. I'm always passive about it because I don't want to put the kids in the middle. So I figured I'll take the hit. I'll be the one that gives in, because I don't.
Sure,
She's so lost in her anger that she doesn't realize that the kids is. She's not well, my ex, and I think
sure,
I have no doubt that she loves the kids, but I'm really not sure to what extent she's aware of her own behaviors. But I've allowed her to get away with so much that it just gets worse, because I
right.
didn't set those boundaries. And I think it's important to do that. Like, you have to stand up for your right as a parent to be in their lives, and to assert that you want to have more time with them, and to keep giving up these privileges or opportunities only makes it worse for you down the line.
Yeah, I think to avoid conflict, um, is one, not healthy. I think there's a healthy way to address conflict.
Yeah.
I did not do. At first I thought about it, and I was like, well, if I just did what she said, that wouldn't have happened. I didn't do that. I didn't call the police. Defying her wasn't about defying her. It was asserting my rights, my children's rights, um, to be able to spend time. I didn't yank them out of school or do anything that was. They had daycare,
Hmm.
and I was off. And she kept saying that I was holding them hostage. She was using words, and I have them on text.
Yeah.
She's also a genius. She texts things that are like, "Do you realize what you're saying?"
Yeah.
Can be screenshotted.
Yeah.
And she used words like withholding, um, hostage, and kidnapping. I said, lady,
Yeah.
I'm not holding, or I'm communicating with you. I have
Mhm.
them. You're welcome to meet me with them wherever you choose.
Yeah.
And it turned into this thing where I'm not meeting you anywhere. It'll be at the police station. And I said, I'm not meeting you at a police station. The judge said we don't have to meet at a police station. There's never been a reason for that. Well, she brings the boyfriend. I call him the emotional support animal. Um, and then the cops too. The cops were called to begin with, even before I got there. And there was no reason for it. It was only because I was defiant of her orders, of her control. And that's clear. So I would say, and there's risk, guys. There's risks in doing the right thing. And there's also risks in not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So life's a crapshoot. So what side of decision making do you want to be on? You have to protect you and your kids. It's sad that they saw what they saw. How it affects them, I don't know. But it's a story to tell, and maybe that event, along with other ones, I'll use it in court. Look at what. So
It's a very big one, and I'm listening to this, and you can't help but think about what your experiences and observations have been, and it's so important to I avoid conflict and to a fault, and I think that you want to. It's a tough thing to want to protect the children from this adversity, but at
right.
the same time to lose more opportunities with them or to have things worsen as far as the alienation. It's very very difficult line to walk, and I find it here. I'm like you. I always point out that it happens to mothers as well. Uh,
Hmm.
that as you're starting to see, it's more about the moneyed spouse than it is about. There's a big gender bias, and I think that
Sure.
from my perspective, I've experienced a tremendous gender bias from every player, in it. I've had to call police when visitation was denied to me, and I was told to just sit in the car. They went in and got my ex's version, then came out and told me, that I'm gonna have to take this up in court. It's just like, this is my parenting time. My
Right.
parenting time is being withheld, and then you're punning. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're I'm losing on all fronts here. I called for help, and I find it from every step in the way. I've um, I've been disappointed with the people that were, I was told that you were told to turn to, and
Hmm.
the bias that I experienced, and I've had that experience with CPS. I've had the experience
Uh-huh.
with the police department. I've had the experience in court with different judges, and you just kind of wonder, like, it's it's almost so acceptable to put a father through this. And again, this happens to women, but if you look at statistically, it happens more often to men. And it's something, what I find is it's like, it's almost like there's a double standard as to who falls on the short end of this. And
Right. Well,
I do say that when it does happen to women, there's a harsh double standard because there's more people who make assumptions when the woman is in
something's wrong with her.
yeah, exactly. So I think that in some ways it's worse for a targeted mom or an alienated mom.
Well, like you said, it's about money, and in smaller areas of the world, it's about who you know.
Yeah.
Also, there
Mhm.
is a reason why good parents get the short end of the stick. It's usually a corrupt, terrible reason. But if good parents are not getting their children, or their rights aren't being protected, there is either relationships within the system, there is either a financial difference that is allowing. See, me and my ex, up until, I've already spent thousands, and that probably a lot less than you, because you've spent so much, because guess what, you made a lot and you were a doctor, so they took it. They knew how much you made, and that's why your court battle was exhausted to the length that it was. What they're hoping is that they're going to bleed you dry. And if the money keeps coming in, if they can't destroy you, they're going to bleed you as much as you can.
I always
So
compared to locusts. I always said locusts come in, they deplete everything and every resource possible, then they move on. And that's what happens to us. Like they know they're going to
precisely.
deplete you. They know that what's the next thing you do? You're going to turn to family for money, right? Then
Yep.
you turn to friends. And if you're really
Right.
desperate, you have a GoFundMe. When everything's exhausted, next thing you know, that's when it's over.
We have legalized in this country, and I always like to say it. I'm very forthcoming with my definitions and terminologies, and I can thank Adam Kokesh, who's a libertarian activist himself. To define things by what they are, and I don't know if it was Buddha or somebody that said that. This is legalized child kidnapping and trafficking by definition.
Yeah.
Just because the United States legal system is the one propagating it doesn't make it less moral or less criminal.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we need to tell parents, to start saying, hey, you have kidnapped my kids. I don't care what legislation lets you do. This is not representative of the people. So if our legislators are getting into office and passing legislation that is destructive or harming the people that it represents, it's unlawful, it's unconstitutional. We need to change it. You're
Well, I
not
think
doing a good job.
it's really important about what you're doing because you're getting the stories out and people are becoming aware of what's going on. I think that what I find is people give you that look like incredulous, like something's missing, I don't get it. And
Hmm.
I think that by letting people know this is what happens,
Right.
this is the reality. What you see on TV and popular media and movies, that isn't real life. Like
Right.
I like a show called I'm sure Blue Bloods, Law and Order, where like
Oh, I love that show.
the attorneys, like they just want to do the right thing and they go and they investigate, and it's just like so far from the truth.
It is. I mean, even and we need to understand, everybody, that we say defund the police and this and that. There are bad people in every profession, and a lot of these bad people, these we call it, whether you're using the term false actors or fake actors, a lot more, they gravitate towards these positions of power. So what they have to do is they have to sort of put aside their darkness in order to attain this position. And then once they have this authority, that's when they covertly misbehave or abuse. The thing is now is we're seeing it more and more. We can, everybody's walking around as essentially a news team with their phone.
Yeah.
Not too much can go on. And then of course the mainstream media's job is to suppress what you and I are saying as fake news or not statistically accurate, but we know better. We feel what's going on. And when people, just like any time in humanity, when a movement was needed or changes were needed, there's this way that people find each other. And thank God we have the technology that we have. It's being used negatively, but we can counteract that by using it positively.
Definitely. Now, Chris, I want to thank you for coming on. We have a couple more minutes, and I wanted to let's tell people again, what you have going on tonight, where to find you, and
Okay.
just basically something, a key point you just wanted to get out there before we have to sign off.
Well, one, I want to thank you for letting me come on, and this is therapy for me. I'm sure it's therapy for you. Just hearing stories and talking about your story and knowing that we're not alone. I think this gets me through every day. Tonight, I will be on We the Parents podcast. It's a brand new thing. There are Facebook groups and pages. There's Instagram. There's a YouTube page. It was formerly Victims of Family Law, and I wanted to take Victims of Family Law, which was essentially a libertarian coalition for family law advocates, and turn it into this podcast, this media thing. I think that's more of a tool that would be utilized a little bit better than just posting Facebook posts or sharing things. So I wanted to give people the opportunity, experts, to tell their findings, to tell their stories, similar to what you're doing. And so tonight is the second episode. Our first episode, which is on We the Parents Facebook page, was with Dean Tong, and like I said, it was to give Dean the opportunity to discuss his client John Mast, who was murdered, and let people know about the extreme side of what we are going through, and the sickness that's involved in what's happening. So the second episode is with I'll say a friend of mine. I spent a couple hours in his office going over the legislation that was passed, and I'm going to go over that with him tonight. Dennis Rydell, who's a representative here in North Carolina for my district. He's not an attorney, which seems to be great because he's actually a teacher. And he was in the military, I believe. He was a teacher.
What do you know? True representative of the people. What do you know?
Yeah, and absolutely, he's a very spiritual man. He's a very principled man, and a lot of he seemed to have a lot of sincerity and seems to have the same goals that I have and that we have as parents, because he is a parent and he's a grandparent. And I've introduced to him Title 4D. And he got that information for me. He found out how much North Carolina was making on Title 4D here in North Carolina. So tune in tonight on We the Parents. Again, Facebook page, search it, or YouTube. We'll go on live at 8:00 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm looking forward to talking with a representative about shared parenting in North Carolina specifically.
Well, I'm very excited about that, and thank you. And then I plan on sharing that on this platform, My Radio USA. So I'm interested in see what you're doing. So I want to thank you for coming on, and I look forward to seeing you again a little bit later on today.
Dr. Carlos, thank you, man. And I'd love to have you on my podcast soon. So let's chat.
I would love to. All
right.
Great.
Have a good day.
You too. And I'd like to thank everyone for sharing the morning with us. And good to see you. Hope you have a good day. And I'd like to thank iRadio USA for giving us this platform to allow these stories to get out. So until we see you again tomorrow, be well. And don't forget, We the Parents tonight at 8 p.m. All right?
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Be good.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.